Yeah.
Well, you're not. Stop showing the camera your bow tie. They want to see the facing, not
What
the
am I
booty.
supposed to do? Lay this way then?
Yeah. Or just sit up. Your phone's being dumb again. It's being stupid again.
Why is my phone being stupid?
I have to get off and get back on like I did last time because there's now on YouTube, for some reason it was where I can pause the video and then won't let me unpause.
The ventriloquist is a...
Okay. At some point in time.
The ventriloquist is a well-known Batman villain, even if in the grand scheme of Batman's lore, he's a more recent addition. The first ventriloquist was Arnold Wesker, who debuted in Detective Comics 583 in 1988, created by John Wagner, Alan Grant, and Norm Breyfogle. This version would find himself adapted in the 90s animated series, as well as later Batman adaptations such as The Batman. And as a result, as well as his uses inside the comics itself, fairly quickly cemented himself as a staple of Batman's rogues gallery. At base, the character is playing with a tried and true concept, the scary doll, but also fused with some Jungian archetypes. Playing out in the relationship between Wesker and his dummy Scarface, in that you see Wesker as the true self, and Scarface occupying the space of both persona and shadow. The anima and animus isn't really part of this version of the ventriloquist, but we'll get there. Also, there will be the playing with the idea of split personalities. Just in general, scary ventriloquist stories are quite old. The oldest I was able to track down was one called The Rival Dummy. This was a short story by Ben Hetz from 1928, which was adapted into the pre-code film The Great Gabbo in 1929.
You stupid dummy.
The short story is a bit hard to track down, but it has been reprinted in anthology form. For example, it's featured in a book called Wolf's Complete Book of Terror, which is out of print time of recording, but there are used copies floating around. Now, as for DC's ventriloquist and the change over to a new character, as well as how it pertains to Jung, the anima/animus is the exploration of the feminine and masculine aspects of the psyche. That's the Cliff Notes. Which is our way to segue to a did you know that at one point the Arnold Wesker ventriloquist died and was replaced by a sexy Jessica Rabbit-esque version. I'm Sash, this is Casually Comics, and we're going to take a look at the first female ventriloquist in DC Comics as it pertains to Batman. And yes, there's more than one. The original ventriloquist died in Detective Comics 818 in the year 2006. It was written by James Robinson. The death of Wesker was portrayed as a mystery. Who shot him? Also, Scarface the doll got pretty mangled up in the process. Now, credit where credit is due, Wesker did stay dead. The fact that he's back as the ventriloquist is a result of the New 52 reboot, which created a new timeline, and he never died there. It also helps that his replacement never fully caught on. I wasn't able to find much receipt/quote-wise, sadly, regarding her creation. Someone commented that she was a recycled concept from a direct-to-DVD movie that never saw the light of day, but I could not confirm that, so if anyone has a source for that, sharing is care. Either way, we're about to dive into Lady Ventriloquist as she appeared in the comics. Now, when it comes to how she debuted and appeared in the comics, we're going to skip ahead a tiny bit in terms of naming her. Otherwise, we'd just be calling her Lady Ventriloquist or Sugar for a while. Although in the arc, it was a bit of a reveal as to who she was. But her name is Peyton Riley, and she debuts in Detective Comics 827 in the year 2007 in the story Double Talk, written by Paul Dini of Batman TS Acclaim, who did a not insignificant stint on Detective Comics. It had art by Don Kramer, so those two are credited as her creators. On inks, there's Wayne Faucher, and colors, John Colitz. There's quite a build-up to this character and to her reveal. This whole issue is set up as a mystery, that the ventriloquist has returned. Batman's lured out at first by a dummy of Selina. Then he's faced with a Scarface dummy in a Robin costume that explodes. It is pretty creepy, and there's that brief flirtation with the idea that maybe there's a supernatural element at play, which is an angle you'll see played with in the scary doll/toy tales. Be they ventriloquist dummies or not, there's just something eerie there. Some dolls seem pretty cursed. Batman goes to check if Wesker is still alive and has his coffin exhumed, and the corpse is gone. The thing is, he was pretty definitively dead. Bullock adds another layer to the mystery by saying that even though Wesker was buried, the doll had gone missing before that. Through some undercover investigation, Bruce learns that Scarface is set to have a comeback party at the Iceberg Lounge, which he infiltrates in disguise. Our first glimpse of Peyton is as what people assume is as a hostess or henchwench. She even gets lightly assaulted by one of the patrons who gives her a huge smack on the behind. Oh, that's what I'm talking about.
about?
As the curtain lifts, Wesker and the dummy sit in shadow, only for the panels to slowly show our blonde bombshell making her way to the stage, where she knocks over Arnold's corpse and takes his place. Of course, some changes have been made, but I know you'll agree Mr. Scarface is back and better than ever. So right away, there's an attempt to visually differentiate this Scarface, but also still stay a bit in the motif. Sugar, as Scarface calls her, is quite clearly the gangster's mall type. She's also done up like a showgirl, which lends itself a bit into the vaudevillian history of ventriloquism. Her hair is Jessica Rabbiting / Veronica Lake hard, and it's going to be revealed to be more than just an aesthetic choice. The look
With Peyton Raleigh, I actually wish that they used her a lot more, since it was better than how they did Arnold, because it actually felt more, mafia type, and actually brought out more mafia of Scarface, and he's supposed to be a mafia boss. And yes, there's only 3 of them. Well, 3 main ones, which are the ones I'm going over for you. And this is the only female one to use Scarface.
is designed to be arresting, eye-catching, but also make one stop and question, but why though? Why would this beautiful woman be attached to this dummy? Because her looks play a part in her character in terms of how people approach her and what they assume about her. There's also a bit of an unsettling element to her, although it can get lost depending upon who's drawing her. But under Kramer, it's their full force. There's this rictus to the smile. It's forced and fake, and her eyes look a bit dead. It's meant to evoke this kind of striking imagery, but then when one digs a bit deeper, there's more to Peyton. You'll see as we go on, the build. The question will just then become, was it enough / did it work? This debut also serves to showcase that Sugar, as the ventriloquist calls her, is a better ventriloquist than Arnold Wesker was, and the fact that she doesn't have to substitute B's and G's. She can say all the words, she can throw her voice, she can do all the tricks, she can drink, she can smoke.
See, we know how the bat works. Once he's after you, he don't quit until he runs you down, so we laid a trail a blind man could follow. In fact, I'd lay odds he's here in this room. Now, which one of you is a phony?
Bruce is able to make all of this fall apart by throwing his voice, because 2 can play at that game, which gives him a chance to try and learn a bit more about this ventriloquist, and also gifted me with this panel of her running with this gun, which amuses me.
Who are you? She's my lady, Bats. You wouldn't believe how much we have in common. Candlelit dinners, walks on the beach. Oh, and we both used to be dead. That was the biggie.
This is a great panel. It highlights the dead quality of her eyes, and it gives a bit more at her design in terms of why the hair is there. There's a literal hidden layer, just as there are going to be hidden layers to her. There's also some mimicry in that her scarring is along the same side as the doll's. It adds to the mystery, but also the connection. It's not just there to be shocking or gruesome. It ties into everything going on. Batman is seemingly able to break the connection by pulling the dummy off of her. He was inside my head, twisting me, forcing me to do those terrible things.
Swag, you two-faced slut, how dare you stab me?
There's something so dark there, and that plays into the addition of the anima / animus, or just her own thoughts about herself, because she's talking about herself this way. This is all her. There is no Chucky possession, anything going on here. Or is there? Because they at some points have played with the...
You see how the dog talked even when it was off of her?
Okay, so he like Slappy?
No. Okay, I'll explain. Scarface was made from wood at a certain area, like a tree, or from a certain area of Blackgate Prison. So either the tree was at Blackgate, or it was made from some type of wood from the building by an inmate who owned him before Arnold found him in a certain timeline of stories in the comics. Arnold then eventually ended up killing that inmate to get Scarface. So, and Batman himself admits that he don't know if Arnold's just crazy or if the doll, the dummy, is actually alive or not. Because they don't fully tell you if Scarface is just a figment of Arnold's and Peyton's imagination,
I already assumed he was possessed like fucking
or if
Slappy.
he's possessed and alive.
I always assumed he was possessed and alive like Slappy is.
The idea that the wood Scarface was made of was haunted, and maybe there was a haunting possession element playing on people's already existent instabilities. Which take do you prefer? Keep him away! Don't let him near me!
You're dead, you hear me? Dead.
But the take I like the more is that Scarface ain't actually alive. I mean, that just gives more character to the people using it. You know, the dummy.
Sorry, I'm into haunted, so I like haunted and possessed more.
Yeah, but then they could just say, the doll made me do it.
I'm still into haunted. Anyone prefer haunted and possessed more?
No. Well, you gotta think about it. It may be dumb over a while. People just saying the doll made me do it. If they didn't just do two ventriloquists that had Scarface. But, like, it really depends on which comic of Scarface I read. Why the fuck? I don't even hit skip.
Flavor out of
Now I gotta
something
go back now.
is a nuanced
Good thing I know where we were at, you know.
And if that doesn't...
It's time for a ventriloquist.
The woman is switching between voices so quickly that I almost missed the quiet clicking sound coming from the dummy. Almost. Another ruse. Another bomb.
What do you think insurance is like on the Iceberg Lounge? Do you think he can get any? This issue ends with hints that this Scarface is in it for revenge, for what happened to them, and that remains a mystery. Also, the shots of just all the copies of the dummy inside her home, very unsettling. There's also some potential ick factor as it hints that she gets freaky with the doll. Right now, Sugar's here, and she's all yours. Now, the character doesn't appear again in this capacity as Scarface until issue 831, but before that in 828, there's a flashback to a friend from Bruce's past, one who died in that issue. R.I.P. Never a good time to be Bruce's friend. In that flashback, it introduces his girlfriend/fiancée. Bruce Wayne meets her, a woman called Peyton Riley, who is implied to be the daughter of a gangster. Now that's left to sit for a bit because the main focus of this issue is that it's a reformed Riddler story, and a fun one at that. Attention-seeking private detective Eddie was a fun time. Also R.I.P. What is noteworthy here is that this is going to be a building block, a layer for the character, showcasing again that she was meant to build. 831 is predominantly a Harley Quinn story, and again, it's a very good issue. If you like Harley, especially classic Harley, when she was just getting her life out from under the Joker, this is a great issue. In it, she's recruited/kidnapped/voluntold to work for this new Scarface. She's asked to perform a robbery for them. At first, it seems like Sugar and Harley are bonding over their past bad relationships with men.
That two of you's got a lot in common. Both of you's hooked up with creeps what promised you had the moon. Then, when they didn't need you no more, they left you to twist in the wind.
Just like the big guy says. Harley is sent to rob a securities company that launders money for the big Gotham crime families, and specifically she's to go on the night the Sabatinos are doing their drop. Unfortunately, Harley's actually trying to do things right, and so she double-crosses them and reports them. She also doesn't believe Sugar's story, saying that she's tired of being taken advantage of, and that they can just feed her sob stories and then she'll do what they want. It's not like that. Scarface truly loves me. What we have is unique.
Hit, baby, save yourself.
Forgive me, Daddy. The combo of that line with her punting him into 2 police cars is pretty amusing. Now, the character is left alone for a bit, reappearing in Detective Comics 843. And here's where it starts to go down. This is where the secrets are going to be revealed. The full backstory is going to be given. The mystery will be solved. Now, this issue, while still being written by Dini, now has pencils by Dustin Nguyen. And while this issue does look great, the change in style does take away a lot of the uncanny look from Sugar. It places her a bit more in the traditional femme fatale model. Zatanna is enticed to work at Sabatino's new venue, which is going to be set up to rival the Penguins, because this one's volcano-themed. Since this is Gotham, I maintain that you should have no theme. Although that probably wouldn't help. Even if you pick something like Soulless Corporate Office, you'd just be attacked by someone called the Temp or something. This issue reveals that it's Johnny Sabatino who is Scarface's target. They're able to capture him, but they also end up taking Bruce with them, which places Bruce in a scenario to now recognize and identify this Scarface as Peyton Riley. Bruce, it's been a nightmare. This thing I've become, the people I've hurt.
It's alright, Peyton. I'll help you.
You know what this scene could have used? I bet some of you know what I'm going to say. An editor's note. The issue where the whole Peyton Riley thing was shown was 828. Just a small one. It wouldn't have hurt. Yes, they explain it here, but just some additional potential context for people who were interested. There's a panel here of Scarface slapping her, and just keep it in mind because it's a moment that's going to get sadder. It's something that at first could appear like it's just there for shock value, but it also factors into the plot and her history. 844 is the issue where all of the aforementioned history is explained. It comes together. Peyton Riley was a well-known gangster's daughter. This, of course, influenced how other people treated her inside the same wealth bracket because she was the known daughter of a criminal. On top of that, her father wanted to marry her off to bridge this gap between warring gangs, him and another one, and the family in question was the Sabatinos. Her father scared Matthew Atkins away from her and started him on the path to alcoholism that ultimately indirectly led to his death all those issues prior. So Peyton ended up marrying Johnny and got trapped in a loveless marriage. But at the same time, she felt it was her duty to help her family thrive, and this is also how she ended up coming into contact with Scarface, Arnold Wesker's Scarface. When she met him, she demonstrated a knack for handling herself during negotiations. Also, Scarface/Arnold Wesker liked her. Not in any kind of romantic or salacious way, but just thought she was clever. It was shown that she had a head for the way that the gangster world operated. So it also lends credence to the fact that she herself was trying to move up within it when she becomes Scarface. All of this just caused her husband to resent her even further, and it added to the layers of their abusive relationship, which turned physically abusive. So that panel of Scarface slapping her, that's tied to her internalized feelings of low self-worth because of her history with abuse. Even though this is her own attempt at vengeance, she's recreating that dynamic. When the Sabatinos made a grab for power, not only did they kill her father, but Johnny tried to kill her too. Shot her in the head. And this happened to occur at the same time as the Scarface murder. So we have the mystery of who killed Arnold Wesker being wrapped up in here as well. She was the one who took the dummy from the murder scene as she heard it talking to her. They leave it kind of vague if this is because of brain trauma she suffered or if it's purely psychological, but either way, that's the tie they try to make. After months of plastic surgery, reconstruction, and rehearsal, the new Scarface/ventriloquist team was born. Though, I did keep one souvenir in your memory, lover. Dustin Nguyen really goes hard on the dead eye. Harder than Kramer, but overall her look is a bit less eerie. It's still a cool panel, and you do still have that hidden element, but it's not entirely the same kind of energy. While Zatanna does try and get through to Peyton about how she's using the doll to process her trauma, and as an avatar for her vengeance, she ultimately fails, and Peyton goes over the edge of the boat that she was trying to kill her ex-husband on with her ex-husband, and they both fall to their deaths. And so, that was her tale. Only, no, not really. Now, the second half of this gets a tad odd outside of the cameo appearances she made here and there and other things, largely written by Dini. So let's quickly recap what we have here for her main arc. On the whole, this arc isn't bad. There's a lot of effort put into crafting a reason for Peyton to have a relationship to the Scarface doll, and the visual is fun. There's a bit of a twist on the standard ventriloquist dummy and owner hand lineup. However, it still doesn't land the same overall as the Wesker version. There's a simplicity and familiarity there that just works. And since that version came first, even with all the explanations, this does feel a bit derivative. Riley both feels like a character that could have continued on, but it also makes sense that she had an arc that concluded, although some may have preferred it to conclude with a reformation or a reclamation rather than the tragic way that it did end. But also, given her history, she could have just been there.
I actually like this because it didn't pull the whole, oh, they were related thing, so she thought she had to take up his role. Like with some other villains who had more than one person with that name.
As the second Scarface. Although, once you did this whole initial plot as to the why, it would have remained to be seen what could be done after that, or if she just would have remained kind of there as a staple standard gangster character. It's a mileage varies moment as to where people think the character could have or should have gone. But other than any of that is how she was used later on in the Detective Comics run. And not in a she's back, she got better kind of way. Instead, we see her in flashbacks in a storyline tied to Hush, Thomas Elliot. During the off times, tongue-in-cheekily referred to Heart of Hush, the arc wherein Hush literally stole Catwoman's heart. Detective Comics 848 to 850, written by Paul Dini, and again with art by Dustin Nguyen, were the final 3 issues of the Heart of Hush storyline. And throughout these issues, there are flashbacks to Thomas Elliot's youth, expanding upon his resentment of Bruce Wayne, as well as the murder of his own parents. During all of this, a romance is introduced between him and Peyton Riley. It's meant to be presenting them as somewhat of kindred spirits. It's also something his mother doesn't approve of. Do you always annoy strangers with stories about pets? Only those that might appreciate the irony. See, as good as they had it, there wasn't a day those cats didn't cry to be free. I don't cry anymore. The helpless, trapped look in your eyes calls you a liar. Don't feel bad. I see the same thing in my mirror every morning. And thus, a romance was born. Ultimately, even though Peyton is willing to do anything for Elliot, including overlook him murdering his mother, use her mafia connections to get him out of trouble, just absolutely anything, he ditches her. You have everything you wanted, Tom, me, the money, and our way out together. Poor Peyton. An hour after Mother's funeral, I was on a jet to Paris. alone. Now, while the idea of them both being people trying to escape their circumstances kind of clicks, Thomas not so much, because his whole thing was he was so jealous of Bruce Wayne because his parents died so he could do whatever he wanted. Lucky orphans getting the best backstories. Overall, this entire edition is a bit of a but why though moment. It doesn't really add anything to Peyton because she's dead, and retroactively it does add a bit more ruthlessness and coldness to her, but that ultimately makes her a tiny bit less sympathetic and potentially would have worked better if she was still around and a threat. Although maybe there were plans to bring her back and then this would have done something. But at this point in Batman comics, they were heading towards Batman being dead and then ultimately New 52. It also just feels a bit repetitive to add this whole her relationships never worked, men betrayed her, because we already saw that. In terms of Thomas Elliot, the reader already knew he was awful. The last revelation in these flashbacks comes between him having given himself plastic surgery to look like Bruce and trying to kill Alfred and the Robins. So it's not like he needed any more fodder inside the jerk engine. And he also doesn't break up with his girlfriends properly. His fish are in too small of a tank. This little bit of information is there, but it doesn't add much or make either character that much more compelling. Although, there were things you could have done with it.
Exactly. Since this isn't a Hush story, where Tommy's the main villain, and Peyton's dead already. So why add the whole flashback shit?
Because maybe she ain't dead. And they just haven't revealed it
Again,
yet.
more in the instance that you were going to keep her around. Something about playing with her mafia ties. Maybe she tried to bring him into the mafia, but he refused because he was so obsessed with Bruce. Or maybe just add this to the pile of how she was so good at negotiating things and observing people, because she's able to figure out what Thomas is about pretty quickly. There were some threads there, but they didn't fully come together. But it also doesn't retroactively harm what was already revealed about Peyton either. Now, aside from this, she has a few other appearances. She appears a decent amount in the miniseries Gotham Underground by Frank Thierry. It was a limited series, and she makes a brief play for Gangland Supremacy, but there's not much to it.
Hang on.
There's also an
Lockup! Lyle Bolton!
Look how many comic book characters they've killed off. Well, people thought they've killed off that years later.
Well, I'm back,
That
baby!
came back.
I'm ready! What the fuck you mean I last been in golf from 50 years ago? I've been running the whole show, bitch!
Mm-hmm.
Joker just comes in next panel and be like, the fuck you just say? Take that shit back.
I'm just saying, who's to say she ain't gonna come back? Who's to say it ain't gonna actually saved by Aquaman or mermaids or something?
Well, she came back in some other panel stuff, so they can put it either way, to where where it happened after she died, before she died, or she didn't die. But she wasn't really used that much. But that's Lockup, I believe. Lyle Bolton, who used to work at Arkham Asylum. That's Firefly, I know that. I think that's Kill 'Em Off.
I'm just saying, since they're still
Yeah.
using her, who's to say it's actually flashback?
I don't think they use her no more. Anymore. Since the main one again is good old Arnold.
her and how she's drawn, and that her one damaged eye isn't
making
depicted,
shit like you
which is a
tell
big
me.
part of her character design. So if one is aware of it, it's a pretty glaring omission. And those comics came out after she had already debuted in 2007, and in that first issue where she debuted, they put that front and center. She's also featured in things like Zatanna #8, which is credited as her last appearance, when Zatanna is trying to find the source of her fear of puppets. That's also a good Zatanna story. We did a retrospective on that entire short-lived Zatanna series. It was a good time. Check it out. While Peyton was fun and had a unique dynamic with the dummy, it didn't catch on. There was potential there, though. Her living on to take the place of her father and the place denied to her by her husband. There was stuff there. Her first explanation minus the Hush stuff was very solid. And while her connection to the
I would have made it to where I'm just gonna fix it up to explain the whole Scarface part. When she was a child, she was a fan of Victorious shows. Okay? This is just me trying to fix it up to where there's actually more reason to explain this shit. Instead of, she got shot in the fucking head. Because, okay, yeah, I can see why you became a villain by getting abused, but not the next Scarface. Not that. Not Victorious. I don't see that part. Aside from you getting shot in the fucking head.
Because
Okay.
you're mafia, so you're supposed to keep everything hush-hush.
And he met Arnold like a couple times. So I'm also gonna build a connection with Arnold Wesker. Maybe he had a ventriloquist show at some point while he's trying to move away from Scarface. I mean, there are comic stories that has Batman actually having him almost move away from Scarface, but at the end of the story, he goes right back to the dummy because he feels like he's nothing without Scarface. So you could have done that, which would then explain why to go with the head trauma from getting shot in the head.
Sock, stop it. We're not going outside. It's cold.
So all that to go with the head trauma from getting shot in the head could explain why she became the next ventriloquist. Also, though, I like the fact that she had, because this is a build off of Arnold, who only had one puppet, who would cry every time Scarface got destroyed, so then he had to go find someone to fix it, or fix it Scarface himself, which then gave him time to not be in Gotham, really, doing crime, so he wasn't really in the newspapers during that time, but she had multiple versions, which I actually liked. But anyways, that's how I could fix her. Aside from maybe adding in, also take out the whole Tommy thing. We don't need to know that she has a thing for Hush. The man is crazy. We don't need to build him any romantic interest. It is 9:42.
Felt a bit more contrived. It did work. She didn't need to be confined to that one storyline, but that is what happened. Because other times she's just kind of a standard gangster character.
But I don't know, and I would tie in the connection. I would do more with Zatanna, since Zatanna does magic shows. So she could go to a magic show. Peyton could have. Maybe she also liked those to go with, the ventriloquist shit. Or there's going to be a ventriloquist act at the magic show after Zatanna's act. And turns out it's Peyton. Because I don't understand why she appeared in 2 comics that had Zatanna. Aside from the add-on that Batman has a brief relationship with Zatanna sometimes. But we all know that Batman's a man whore.
When she was focused on, she did end up feeling fleshed out because she was given room to breathe, a slow unveiling. While the way her ending happened does work, I personally wouldn't have minded her sticking around. More Peyton, and it's not just because I'm vicariously living through her Jessica Rabbit dresses. Peyton was also referenced as being Scarface in the Arkhamverse games, but they don't do anything with it. They just reference it. As mentioned, when the New 52 reboot,
What do you mean by they don't do anything with it?
Puppets. That's living through her Jessica Rabbit dresses. Peyton was also referenced as being Scarface in the Arkhamverse games, but they don't do anything with it.
That's the games, okay? I believe there was a scene of her in the comics. They did something with her in the non-canon, or maybe canon Arkham comics. It took me a while to realize that wasn't Arnold Wesker's gun. So it looks like the same Tommy gun that was in Arkham Asylum. And I'll explain what I'm talking about. Batman Arkham Asylum, you go down a certain hallway, and you see this thing that says, evidence or Arkham on it, because for some reason, instead of the evidence going to the GCPD, they were kept in glass cages at Arkham. And so, along with Ventriloquist's gun, who was owned by Arnold Wesker, there was also Catwoman's claws and goggles, Penguin's umbrellas and top hat and umbrellas, and Black Mask original mask that he had before his mask got permanently burned to his face in the comics. But yeah. And so I thought that this was the one owned by...
Shut up, Sox, you're not going out.
So I thought this was the one owned by Arnold until I read the name, Peyton Rowley, because on evidence thing they put, last name and first name. And then I was like, wait a minute, they referenced her? And then I realized that she was in the comics. I don't know what she did in the comics. I read her Arkham Wikipedia a long time ago, but don't know what she did. But yeah. And also, this is one of the universes that they don't know if Scarface is just a dummy or not.
Let's reference it. As mentioned, when the New 52 reboot occurred, Wesker would take on the role of ventriloquist once again, and then eventually there would be another female ventriloquist, but it would not be Peyton, but rather Shauna Belzer, which further pushes Peyton into the shadows. So Peyton Riley just kind of fell by the wayside. And for the moments that she did have,
I would have made her a Robin villain.
For many, it still wasn't the same as Arnold Wesker,
Not
even
Batman.
if they did like her.
Actually,
Maybe people
no.
can relate a little.
No. I would even made her to have original Arnold come back, I would either made her a Robin villain for whoever the current Robin, I think it was Tim Drake. Tim Drake had to be in the current Robin at the time, since there's a whole Hush story going on. Or made her a Nightwing villain, and have her move to Bloodhaven and try to become a mafia boss there. But yeah, now I'm gonna go to the next video, because this one is the worst version of ventriloquist.
On the fucking.
Okay. This is the
Ventriloquist
last
who's bringing the 80s
ventriloquist.
horror movie energy.